In the spring of 2001, Malcolm in the Middle was the little sitcom that could, racking up viewers and awards at a dizzying pace. But for its much-anticipated second season, the show put forth an April Fool's Day episode that shocked Hollywood. Lauded for its unusual structure and celebrated for its meme-worthy climax, it ranks among the show's best efforts. You want a strike? I'll give you a strike, because we're going bowling next on Best Eps. Linwood Boomer's family is perhaps as unusual as his name. Growing up in San Francisco by way of Vancouver, Boomer found himself surrounded by chaos. To escape some of that madness, he started acting after high school. In fact, he had only gone on his second of 2 auditions when he lucked into the part of Kendall, the blind teacher, on Little House on the Prairie in 1977. Post Little House, Boomer made the typical early 80s rounds on game shows Fantasy Island and The Love Boat, before deciding writing, not acting, was where his heart was. Staff writing jobs on Silver Spoons and Night Court followed. He even wrote a pilot for a TV version of the Tom Hanks film Big that wasn't picked up. But the 90s saw him questioning his calling. Boomer looked at some of the TV shows currently on the air and didn't connect with any of them. So he took a year off trying to land a staff writing job, and finally did something his friends always told him he should do. He put his crazy family stories down on paper. Inspired by shows such as Ozzie and Harriet and The Wonder Years, Boomer penned a spec script about a seemingly normal kid growing up in a decidedly abnormal family, and he called it Malcolm in the Middle. There was gifted middle child Malcolm, based on Boomer, surrounded by the inane yet ultimately heartfelt antics of his brothers, his mom, and his dad. Linwood Boomer's agent, Rick Rosen, loved the writing sample, but instead of trying to use it to find jobs, Rosen suggested trying to get it made. To Boomer's surprise, fledgling network UPN called to make a deal. UPN executive Dean Valentine worked with Boomer to refine the script, changes that didn't make the script better in so much as they made it different. So Boomer was relieved when UPN head honcho Tom Noonan soon vetoed any further development on Malcolm in the Middle. To Boomer's surprise, however, Valentine said he still loved the script and quietly gave it back to Boomer instead of having it languish in a drawer somewhere. As Boomer later pointed out, that never happens. With a second chance at life, Boomer reverted the script back to his original vision and had Rosen send it around again. This time a woman named Tracy Katzke, Senior VP of Comedy at Regency Television, became the show's champion. Regency bought it, but had trouble getting any interest from the other networks. Executives were all too happy to point out why the show would never work. As Boomer said, it wasn't a nice family. The mom was mean, the dad was dumb, they don't hug, they don't kiss, and they don't say I love you. Actually, that sounds perfect for Fox. In 1998, new Fox executive Doug Herzog was still commuting to L.A. from his home in New York and took to reading scripts during the red-eye Friday night flights. When someone in his office suggested Malcolm for the ride home, he finished it by saying, "This is the funniest thing I've read since I got here." Boomer was excited, though wary. When he met with Herzog, he had a pen in his hand, waiting for more suggested changes. But to his utter shock, Herzog said, "I love this. Let's shoot it." As Boomer recalls, Herzog had only been on the job 3 weeks, so he didn't know he was supposed to piss all over it. Production ramped up on Malcolm in the Middle's pilot, and though casting went smoothly for the most part, Boomer struggled to find an actor who could pull off the role of the dad. Hal, he said, was written as a disconnected dad who would offer only grunts and sighs behind the morning paper, but none of the dozens of actors he saw were right. With shooting of the pilot set to go the very next day, Boomer was desperate until finally, journeyman character actor Bryan Cranston walked into the audition. According to Boomer, Cranston approached the role as if he was always trying to quietly build a rocket ship in his head. Now, despite negative reviews from focus groups, Doug Herzog loved the finished pilot and immediately picked up Malcolm for 13 episodes, starting in January of 2000. But Hollywood insiders called it Herzog's Folly because it was about a sitcom without a laugh track, about a kid. There were no kids in primetime. Despite his misgivings, Fox chairman Sandy Grushow plowed more than $4 million into marketing Malcolm, especially during NFL Sunday Football. Boomer joked that he might be the only showrunner in history who got sick of seeing promos for his own show. But the strategy worked. Launched cozily between established hits The Simpsons and The X-Files, Malcolm in the Middle did boffo numbers. On January 9, 2000, 22.4 million people tuned in. Critics gushed over its prototypical take on family comedy, with, Variety added, an undercurrent of love and gentle support running through the show. Malcolm, TV columnist said, was going to save the family sitcom from extinction. That first season landed Boomer and his team 2 Emmys and an Outstanding Achievement in Comedy Award from the Television Critics Association, to say nothing of it being honored for the prestigious Peabody Award alongside The West Wing. Said Boomer to Written By magazine, "I couldn't have been more shocked if you told me I'd grown a tail." After only 4 episodes that hit the air, Fox said it was extending Boomer's initial 13-episode order and announced plans for a full-length season 2. With the promise of 20-plus more episodes to write, Boomer went out searching for more writers, finding most of them on the staff at God, the Devil, and Bob. That was a woeful animated flop from early 2000, starring the voice of James Garner that lasted only 4 episodes. But included among those now unemployed Bob writers was Alex Reid, a former Silicon Valley marketer turned stand-up comedian. As the new, larger Malcolm writing staff gathered around the big boardroom table during the summer writers' retreat, their conversation turned to a 1998 Gwyneth Paltrow film called Sliding Doors. It was a little-seen independent British film that followed a woman after a seemingly inconsequential event, missing a train. Using a split-screen, writer-director Peter Howlett then offers viewers a glimpse into the 2 possible paths her life takes based on that one missed subway. In one timeline, she makes the train and falls in love with a stranger. In the other, she misses the train and remains in a loveless relationship. What if, the writers proposed, they took that same double storyline concept and applied it to Malcolm in the Middle? What if the story followed 2 timelines of a boy-girl bowling party? In one version, Mom Lois would take Malcolm and Reese to the bowling alley while Hal stayed home with grounded Dewey. And in the other, the opposite would happen, allowing viewers to get a glimpse at just how different Mom and Dad's parenting styles were. And how those styles, her being strict and him being easygoing, affected their kids. It was a big swing, a gimmicky premise coming at a time when Malcolm was critically acclaimed and only 20 or so episodes old. So normally, outside-the-box episodes such as flashbacks and dreams and shark jumps crop up only when a long-running or failing series is desperately out of ideas. The writers felt some trepidation when pitching it to Linwood Boomer. However, to their surprise, he liked it, although he likely pointed out the concept, parallel stories, and the topic, bowling, do not a story make. "We have only one mandate we always remember when writing the show," Boomer told his staff, "and that is everybody suffers." Going back to the whiteboard, the writers decided that suffering should come from Malcolm during the timeline in which his mother drove him to the bowling alley. And for Hal, in the scenario where he took the boys to the bowling alley, that's where his suffering should occur. Once the room collectively worked out all the major points of the story, it was turned over to writer and producer Alex Reid. Not necessarily because bowling was his idea, however, rather simply because it was his turn at bat. "On some level, the name on the script is just taking a turn," Boomer told the Writers Guild Foundation Forum. "They're all so group written, it's collaborative. And it's that way with most comedy shows. As Alex Reid told Florida Today in 2001, I'm just the lucky guy who got to go off and write it." 8 weeks and a half a dozen rewrites / group edits later, the script for Bowling was finally ready to shoot. But upon flipping through the script, star Jane Kaczmarek was confused. "I remember reading it and thinking, I couldn't follow it. she told A&E's TVography in 2002. She knew the only way for an episode like Bowling to work was to put it in the hands of the right director, and Boomer agreed, saying, "The writers and I looked at each other and realized how tough this one was going to be to make. Then, when the script was finally finished, we just said, yep, this one's for Todd." So Todd is Todd Holland, a veteran director of Twin Peaks, My So-Called Life, and The Larry Sanders Show. It was Holland who had directed the much-lauded pilot for Malcolm, taking the approach of creating a kind of live-action cartoon for the series. Given the physicality of Bowling, Holland proved to be the perfect choice. Todd Holland did an amazing job with the camera angles for this episode, believes Alex Reid. It was just one of those times where it all came together perfectly. Filming took place early in 2001 on both Stage 20 at CBS Radford for the home scenes and Corbin Bowl in the San Fernando Valley of Los Angeles. That alley exists, and you can still bowl there on the same lanes depicted in this episode. Once filming wrapped, Fox scheduled Bowling to air appropriately on April Fool's Day 2001. But as the air date approached, the Malcolm cast and crew got some good news and some bad news.
There are two sides to every story.
Who's gonna drive it? I'll do it.
I'll do it.
And Malcolm's living both of them at the same time.
You are going to have so much
One
fun.
complaint about your behavior and I'll come down on you like a hammer.
An episode you've got to see to believe.
What kind of parent would leave these kids alone with themselves?
Okay, I'll see you in a couple hours.
An all-new Malcolm next on Fox.
2 days before Bowling aired, the Peabody Awards were announced in Athens, Georgia. They're basically the screen version of the Pulitzer Prize. And on March 30th, 2001, Linwood Boomer took to the stage to accept a Peabody Award on behalf of Malcolm in the Middle. The bad news I hinted at was that the Frasier writers beat the Malcolm writers to the Sliding Doors homage by a mere couple of weeks. On February 13th, NBC aired Sliding Frasiers, written by Dan O'Shannon and Bob Daly. It's a Valentine's Day episode that follows two narratives as Frasier alternates between wearing his suit to a speed dating event or a sweater. As I said, sometimes gimmick episodes come at a time when a long-running show is fresh out of ideas. And that's why Sliding Frasiers won't make this channel as one of TV's best eps. It's a cloying, cringy, maudlin effort that ultimately adds up to nothing. There are no big revelations, no gut-busting climax, and it offers no big insights into Frasier's character. It doesn't hold a candle to Bowling, which is dripping with character. Our episode starts with Malcolm and Reese having primped and primed themselves for a boy-girl bowling party, and when they're ready to go, they turn to their parents. Who's going to drive us? It's that question that kicks off the premise. The screen splits. On one side, Mom says she'll do it, and on the other, Dad says he'll do the honors. But we're only 30 seconds into the story, and already the game is afoot. But in the minivan, we already get a sense of how each story is probably going to go. While wary Mom wants them not to get into trouble, Dad is giddy with excitement. In other words, for Lois, this is a chore, but for Dad, this is a night out. Todd Holland's playful direction begins as they enter the Rockin' Bowl. After Mom and the boys rent shoes and head off, the camera lingers on the doors as Dad and the boys enter, creating a seamless, fun transition between the two stories. It's a technique Holland will use throughout Bowling to clearly signify which timeline is which. But here we cut back to the B story, where Mom and or Dad babysit Dewey. And it's in this story where their differing parenting styles really come to the fore. Dewey can't get away with anything while Mom is there. But with Dad watching him, Dewey has the absolute run of the place. So back to the bowling alley, things kick into gear when Malcolm notices a pretty girl from school. But what Mom notices is there's no parental chaperones. So she decides, well, insists, she's going to do it herself. What kind of a parent would leave these kids alone with themselves, she wonders. And with a whooshy cartoon-style whip pan, we're back on the Halternet story. Okay, he tells the boys, I'll see you in a couple of hours, telling the clerk, I don't want to cramp their style. Another whoosh, and we see Lois is all about cramping styles, trying to fix Malcolm's bowling game by giving her son a neon green little kid's ball. And this is where Linwood Boomer's suffering sets in. Pretty girl or not, Malcolm hates being there. He's embarrassed and mortified by his mother's militaristic encouragement. In the other timeline, however, things are going great for Malcolm as he strikes up a conversation with Beth. Meanwhile, Things are also going great for the long-suffering Hal. He's bowling a perfect game, but only if he repeats a series of escalating superstitious tics before each roll. It's a tour de force physical comedy performance from Bryan Cranston, a skill the writers would increasingly rely on through the run of the show. But without Dad's supervision, Reese runs amok in the alley, kicking off a line of action that eventually concludes with Hal losing his perfect game in the last frame. For Malcolm, he's had enough of Mom's meddling and absolutely loses it. "You want to strike?" he intones as he picks up the ball and marches down to the end of the alley. "I'll give you a strike," he screams at his mom. "Here's your damn strike." Malcolm then whips the ball at the pins from 2 feet away and misses every single one, a seemingly impossible feat given his close proximity. It's one of TV's all-time classic meme-worthy moments, and surprisingly needed no camera trickery or CGI to pull off. As star Frankie Muniz told a Reddit AMA in 2015, "So when we filmed it, they expected I would hit some pins, so they told me to act like I didn't hit anything after the throw. So we filmed it, and I say the line, and I throw the ball, and I literally didn't hit a single pin. You can kind of see me smirk a little bit, because I was so excited that I actually missed the pins. And they used it because they would never get another take where I missed all of them." In the Hal timeline, however, though Malcolm is cool and relaxed, he actually doesn't get to kiss the girl of his dreams, and instead accidentally ruins Dad's perfect game. In the Lois timeline, Malcolm is humiliated and vulnerable, but it's these qualities that earn him the smooch at the end. Bowling brilliantly shows that while both Hal and Lois each take a different tack in their parenting styles, neither one is all that good or all that bad. The suffering in each storyline is constant and stifling. The only way out is through, and if you can endure it to the end, you just might find your just reward. It's not only a brilliant theme for the episode, but one that perfectly encapsulates Malcolm in the Middle itself. TV Guide agreed, making bowling an editor's choice that week, and viewers also seemed to agree. When the Nielsen ratings were released later in the week, it was reported 13.7 million people tuned in to watch bowling, logging Malcolm in the top 25, ahead of The Simpsons, The X-Files, and even The West Wing. On Friday, July 6th, Fox rebroadcast bowling, allowing critics to expound on the episode's virtues, calling it a clever character study and, quote, one of the year's most entertaining episodes. Members of the TV Academy perhaps took notice of the notices, because 6 days later, when the 53rd Emmy nominations were announced, Malcolm in the Middle found itself with 7 nominations, besting Will and Grace and even Frasier in total nods. At age 15, Frankie Muniz found himself up for Best Actor in a Comedy, due largely to his performance in bowling. Todd Holland also earned a director nomination for this episode, as did Alex Reid, who remained hopeful but humble. "I knew bowling had the potential to be very interesting, but I wasn't thinking about the Emmy nominations because every writer on the show submits a script," Reid said. The Emmy nominations were the only love being poured on bowling. The episode would go on to earn a Writers Guild nomination for Reid and a Directors Guild win for Todd Holland. Now, September 11th delayed the 2001 Emmy Awards until November, but when the ceremony eventually took place, it was ironically Frasier's Kelsey Grammer who presented Todd Holland with his directing Emmy. Holland was so sure James Burrows would win for Will and Grace, he didn't even prepare a speech. A few minutes later in the ceremony, Gene Smart took the stage to honor Frasier co-creator David Angel, who was aboard Flight 11 when it crashed into the North Tower on September 11th. Smart then announced Alex Reid's name as the winner for bowling's writing, beating out one of Will and Grace's best eps, the flashback episode Lois in the mid-'80s. Reid was so shocked, he forgot to thank his wife Gretchen during the acceptance speech. She wasn't upset, he told the Orlando Sentinel, which makes me feel worse. Variety called bowling's 2 awards, quote, a jaw-dropping upset, unquote. Though some critics scratched their head as to how a show wins Best Direction and Writing and fails to win Best Comedy Award. In 2009, TV Guide ranked bowling 90th on its list of the 100 greatest episodes of all time, with the AV Club calling it one of the best episodes of the decade. And today, IMDb users have given bowling a rating of 9.2 out of 10. Malcolm in the Middle lasted 115 more episodes after Bowling, so the show's legacy comprises more than just that one episode. Not only did its decision to forego a laugh track provide proof of concept that one-camera comedies could still work, but its skewed, blunted idealism became known in Hollywood circles as the new voice of the Fox network. Fox neo-classics like The Bernie Mac Show and Arrested Development both owe a debt of gratitude to Malcolm in the Middle. But by 2006, Linwood Boomer wanted to move on to other things. He had his own kids in middle school, and he wanted to be around while they were growing up. Oh, and by the way, Boomer's wife ended up being Tracy Katzke, the VP of Comedy at Regency, who scooped up Malcolm in the Middle in the first place. After Boomer's departure, the core writing staff on Malcolm also began to move on to development deals and shows of their own, and as will happen, the quality of the show suffered. As the kids aged out while new showrunner Matthew Carlson tried to inject some life by adding a new baby, the ratings began to slide. When Fox eventually announced Season 7 would be the last, producers offered up the episode Graduation, a series send-off that often gets overlooked on the lists of TV's best series finales. For television fans, in hindsight, the cancellation was a good thing, because had the show been picked up for Season 8, Bryan Cranston would not have been able to audition for Breaking Bad. Now, can you imagine that show with Vince Gilligan's original choice, John Cusack, as Walter White? Talk about an alternate universe. For fans of the show today, there is still hope. As of late 2022, Bryan Cranston was looking to revive Malcolm in the Middle. For his part, Frankie Muniz is all in, telling Entertainment Weekly, "I would love to know what this family is up to." And of course, so would we all.